My daughter-in-law thought one threat would make me hand over everything I had saved. She didn't know I had already changed my passwords, secured my accounts, and prepared one final document that would leave both her and my son speechless. I adjusted my reading glasses and carefully smoothed out the printed itinerary for my upcoming 3-week train voyage through the Canadian Rockies. After 34 years working as a head clerk for the county registrar, my retirement savings were neatly organized, fully funded, and strictly my own. My husband had passed 6 years ago, leaving me with a small paid-off bungalow in suburban Ohio and a clear mind. The front door opened, bringing in the brisk autumn air along with my son Mark and his wife Chloe. Chloe stepped into the kitchen without taking off her coat, her eyes scanning the counter until they landed on the brochure. Mark trailed behind his hands, shoved deep into his jacket pockets while avoiding my gaze. "What is this, Eleanor?" Chloe asked, pointing a manicured fingernail at the shiny paper. "Mark said you were looking at trips, but this looks like a full luxury package." "It is," I said, mildly placing my pen down. "I finalized the booking this morning. I leave in 3 weeks." Chloe sighed loudly, dropping her leather handbag onto my immaculate dining table. "You need to cancel it. We're putting an offer on that 4-bedroom home in Pine Ridge, and the closing costs are higher than we calculated. Your savings should go to our family instead of some random train ride." I looked at Mark. He shifted his weight, staring intently at the linoleum floor. Chloe's entitlement was not new, but hearing her demand my hard-earned funds with such casual authority chilled the room. Instead of raising my voice or arguing, I quietly picked up the trip brochure, folded it once, and slid it into my apron pocket. I stood up, walked over to the stove, and turned off the kettle I had been heating for tea. "I am going to make a phone call," I told them calmly, leaving the kitchen before another word was spoken. The following evening, I sat at my desk, reviewing the past 2 years of financial records. This was not the first time Chloe had viewed my retirement accounts as a communal safety net. When they remodeled their kitchen 18 months ago, she suggested I cover the custom cabinetry as an early inheritance gift for Mark. I had politely declined then, but the boundary clearly had not stuck. Mark stopped by after work under the pretense of borrowing a ladder. He found me sorting through old files in the spare room. "Mom, Chloe was really upset yesterday," he began, leaning against the door frame. "She didn't mean it sound so harsh, but things are tight with the new baby coming next year, and we really thought you'd want to help us build a bigger home." "Mark," I said, looking up from my paperwork. "I spent 3 decades managing county records. I know how to calculate budgets and plan for the future. You and Chloe bought a new SUV 6 months ago and spent 2 weeks in Cancun." He rubbed the back of his neck, unable to counter the facts. "It's just hard seeing you spend thousands on a solo trip when we could use the stability. Your father and I lived below our means, so we wouldn't rely on anyone," I reminded him gently. "I expect you to do the same." Later that night, I received a group text from Chloe containing a link to a lower-priced domestic weekend getaway. Attached was a note. "Maybe you could do this instead and transfer the difference to our house fund." I did not reply to the text message. Instead, I opened my online banking portal, changed the password to a complex 20-character string, and set up 2-factor authentication on all my personal investment accounts to ensure complete security moving forward. For the past 4 years, I had hosted Sunday dinner for Mark and Chloe every single week. I spent hours shopping, prepping, and cooking elaborate meals while they relaxed on my sofa. It was a tradition I enjoyed, but it had gradually turned into an expectation rather than a shared pleasure. On Friday morning, I sent a text to the family group chat. "I am taking the weekend off to pack and organize my home. No Sunday dinner this week. Within 10 minutes, Chloe called my cell phone. I answered on the fourth ring while potting pansies on the back porch. Eleanor, are you sick? She asked, her tone laced with suspicion rather than concern. We usually plan our grocery shoppings around Sunday dinners at your house. I am perfectly healthy, Chloe, I replied, wiping soil from my garden gloves. I am simply adjusting my routine. I have errands to run and preparations to make for my travel next month. Well, Mark was really looking forward to your roast beef, she said, her frustration slipping through. We feel like you're pulling away from us over a simple misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding, I said evenly. I'm busy this weekend. You two enjoy your Sunday. I hung up before she could respond. I spent Sunday afternoon walking through the local botanical gardens with my neighbor Martha, enjoying a quiet lunch at a cafe afterward. When I checked my phone later, I saw 3 missed calls from Mark and 2 text messages from Chloe asking if I was still going to babysit their dog next month. I texted back a list of 3 reputable local pet boarding facilities in the area. 2 weeks before my departure date, Mark invited me over to their apartment for dinner. I accepted, knowing that an invitation out of nowhere usually meant a coordinated discussion was waiting for me. I wore a simple cardigan, carried my handbag securely over my shoulder, and kept my demeanor pleasant. When I arrived, the dining table was set with nice china, and Chloe had ordered catering from an upscale Italian restaurant. Mark poured wine, while Chloe served the food, pouring on a level of charm that felt entirely manufactured. Halfway through the main course, Chloe set her fork down and smiled warmly. Eleanor, we wanted to talk about the future. We talked to a financial advisor yesterday about our mortgage options. I chewed my food, swallowed, and dabbed my napkin against my lips. Oh, yes, Chloe continued, leaning forward. He said if we put down 25% instead of 10%, our monthly payments would be significantly lower. It would allow us to save for the baby's college fund right away. It just makes the most financial sense for the whole family. Mark cleared his throat. We were hoping we could write up a formal loan agreement, Mom. We could pay you back over 15 years with low interest. You haven't paid off your credit card debt from last year's vacation, Mark, I said, placing my hands in my lap. Adding a private loan with family never works out well. Chloe's warm expression hardened instantly. So, you'd rather give your money to a train company than help your own grandchild have a stable home? My retirement funds are not a loan agency, I said quietly. I stood up, retrieved my coat from the rack near the door, and thanked them for the meal before leaving. The persistent pressure was exhausting, but it hardened my resolve rather than weakening it. I spent Monday morning at my credit union. I met with my longtime advisor, professional and thorough, to review my estate documents. I ensured my house and accounts were placed in a private trust with specific directives that could not be contested or altered without my explicit consent. That afternoon, Mark came to my house alone. He looked tired, the stress of the home buying process finally catching up to him. He sat at my kitchen table while I poured him a cup of coffee. Chloe is furious, Mom, he admitted, staring into his mug. She thinks you don't care about our future. Oh, Mark, I love you dearly, I said, sitting across from him. But Chloe's expectations are entirely out of line. You two earn a good income. If you cannot afford the house in Pine Ridge right now, you need to look at smaller homes or wait until you've saved enough. She wants what's best for us, he defended weakly. She wants what is beyond your current means, and she expects me to fund the gap, I corrected him firmly. I worked 34 years. I managed my money responsibly. I am not going to jeopardize my financial independence in my 60s because your wife wants a 4-bedroom house today." He remained silent for a long time. "So, the trip is still happening." "The trip was paid for months ago," I said, "and my remaining savings will stay right where they are supporting me so that I never have to ask you for a single dime when I am older." He nodded slowly, unable to find an argument that held up against logic. He finished his coffee and left without mentioning the house again. With 5 days left before my trip, I focused entirely on my own life. I packed my luggage with practical layers for the Canadian weather, arranged for my mail to be held at the post office, and notified my security company of my travel dates. I created an itinerary sheet with my hotel phone numbers and left a copy with Martha next door. On Wednesday, Chloe showed up at my front door unannounced. She did not ring the bell nicely. She knocked firmly 3 times. When I opened the door, she walked right past me into the foyer, holding a printed folder. "I brought the paperwork for the private loan," she said, setting the folder on the entry table. "Mark was too soft to push this, but I know you're a reasonable woman, Eleanor. We can have a lawyer sign this today. You can defer your trip to next year." I looked at the folder, then at Chloe. Her persistent refusal to accept a clear answer was no longer just annoying. It was disrespecting my autonomy. "Chloe, take your folder." I said, my voice completely devoid of anger or emotion. "You are wasting your paper and your time. You are being incredibly selfish." She snapped her voice, rising in my quiet hallway. "Older parents are supposed to help their children build a legacy. What good is your money sitting in an account while we struggle?" "You are not struggling," I replied, opening the front door wide. "You are living beyond your means. There is a vast difference. Please leave my house now." She stared at me in shock, clearly unused to someone refusing to engage with her drama. She snatched her folder off the table and stormed out down the driveway. The day before my departure, Mark and Chloe made one last desperate attempt to stop me. They arrived together at 4 in the afternoon. I was in the living room double-checking my travel documents, passport, and boarding passes, which were laid out neatly on the coffee table. Mark looked uncomfortable, but Chloe walked in with an air of absolute finality. She didn't wait for an invitation to sit. She stood right over my coffee table. "Eleanor, we talked to the realtor this morning." Chloe declared, her voice cold and demanding. "The sellers accepted our lower offer, but we need the deposit funds wired by tomorrow morning or we lose the contract. You need to call the travel agency right now. Cancel the reservation and transfer your emergency funds to Mark's account." Mark stood behind her, looking away. "Mom, please. It's just a trip. You can go next year. This house is our dream." I sat quietly on the sofa, observing the two of them. They had convinced themselves that if they pushed hard enough at the last minute, I would crumble out of guilt or panic. They truly believed my purpose in life was to serve as their financial backup plan. "You really think I am going to cancel my plans?" I asked softly. "Your savings should go to our family," Chloe shouted, stepping closer to the table. "You don't need a luxury vacation. We need a home." The sheer arrogance of her declaration filled the room. Mark didn't say a word to correct her. He just stood there, hoping I would yield so he wouldn't have to deal with his wife's anger. It was time to end this cycle once and for all. I looked up at my son. "Mark, do you agree with your wife? Do you believe that my personal retirement money belongs to you?" Mark swallowed hard. He looked at Chloe, then at me. "Mom, we just really need the help right now. You have the money sitting there. It feels like you're choosing a vacation over us." That was his final test, and he failed it completely. He had allowed his wife to turn my hard-earned independence into an act of betrayal. "I didn't choose a vacation over you," I said calmly. "I chose respect for my own life over your lack of financial discipline. I spent decades saving every penny while raising you. I owes you nothing more." Chloe scoffed, crossing her arms. "So that's it. You're just going to hoard your money while your family needs it. You're being completely ungrateful for the family you have. Ungrateful." I smiled slightly, a cold, quiet realization washing over me. I built my life with my own hands. I owe no one anything. I reached onto the table, picked up my blue passport, and held it firmly in my hand. The weight of it felt solid, real, and completely earned. "I am going on my trip tomorrow," I stated, looking Chloe directly in the eyes. "And moving forward, my finances are entirely off limits to both of you." Chloe stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "If you walk out that door tomorrow without helping us, don't expect us to be here when you get back. We won't be visiting, and you won't be seeing your grandchild." It was the ultimate emotional threat used by people who had run out of legitimate arguments. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I placed my passport on the table and smiled. The room went completely silent. Chloe stared at me, expecting tears, guilt, or an immediate apology. Instead, she got the absolute composure of a woman who had spent 34 years enforcing rules and keeping records. "Threatening me with isolation because I won't give you my money shows exactly who you are, Chloe." I said, my voice smooth and unwavering. "And Mark, allowing your wife to blackmail your mother financially shows me exactly where you stand." I stood up slowly, picking up my passport and tucking it into my handbag. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a small printed ledger sheet, a clear breakdown of every financial gift, loan, and assistance I had provided them over the past 5 years, totaling over $15,000. I laid the paper on the table next to Chloe. "You're not getting a dime," I said clearly. "Not today, not tomorrow, and not for your closing costs." Chloe's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the paper, then at my calm, unbothered expression. She realized in that exact second that her leverage was entirely gone. Her threats had no power over a woman who was comfortable in her own skin and secure in her own home. "Mark, take your wife home," I said quietly. "I have an early flight to catch in the morning and I need to get a good night's sleep." Mark grabbed the paper, his face burning with embarrassment. He took Chloe by the arm and pulled her toward the door. She didn't say another word as they walked out into the evening air. The next morning at 6 o'clock, the yellow cab pulled up to my driveway. The air was crisp and clear. I set my security alarm, locked my front door, and walked down the path carrying my small rolling suitcase. Martha waved from her porch across the street, wishing me a wonderful journey. As the cab headed toward the airport, my phone buzzed in my purse. It was a long text message from Mark. He apologized for his behavior the previous night, admitted that Chloe had pushed him too far, and confessed that they had decided to pull their offer on the Pine Ridge house to look for something within their actual budget. He asked if we could talk when I returned. I read the message carefully. I felt no anger, nor did I feel an overwhelming rush to fix things for him. He was a grown man who needed to navigate his marriage and his finances on his own terms. I replied with a short, polite note. I am glad you are making sensible choices. We can talk when I am back. By noon, I was seated comfortably in the observation car of the train, watching the sweeping landscapes of the northern mountains roll past my window. The quiet hum of the tracks beneath me felt like a celebration of my own independence. I had established a firm, unbreakable boundary. My relationship with my son would have to rebuild on a foundation of mutual respect, not financial reliance. For the first time in years, my mind was entirely unburdened. I took a sip of hot tea, opened my book, and looked out at the vast, beautiful road ahead.